A man in a black suit dropped to his knees, desperately begging a doctor to save his daughter. What the doctor did not know was that, just 1 hour earlier, this same man had left that little girl on the side of a busy road. He had promised his wife he would take their daughter Nuan safely to school, but then he got a call from his ex-wife, who said their son was sick. Without thinking, he pulled the car over just a few hundred meters from the school. He told his daughter to walk the rest of the way herself, ignoring her cries as he drove off to his other family. The little girl was scared of being left alone. She ran into the street chasing after his car and begging her father not to leave her. But in the next second, she suddenly fell down and was hit by another car. It just so happened that a brilliant heart specialist, Dr. Long, was driving by. He rushed out of his car and found the girl passed out on the ground. He quickly saw the signs of sudden heart failure and knew she had less than 30 minutes to live. He picked her up and ran to the hospital while his assistant urgently tried to call her parents. But when the kindergarten teacher called the girl's mother, the phone just rang and rang with no answer. Meanwhile, the father was at a different hospital with his ex-wife, who told him their whole plan. It turned out their divorce 5 years ago was all a trick for him to take control of his new wife's company. He promised that as soon as she signed over 51% of the shares, he would leave her and marry his ex-wife again. Just as he was calming her down, Dr. Long rushed through the hospital doors carrying the badly hurt Nuan. Seeing the daughter he had just left behind, the man stood frozen in shock. The little girl's heart rate was dropping fast, and the doctor ordered an immediate emergency surgery. Only then did the father fall to the floor, crying that he was a monster and begging the doctor to save his daughter's life. That same day, a man and his ex-wife pushed into the emergency room, demanding to see the head specialist, Director Liu. Another doctor tried to explain that Director Liu was in the middle of a life-or-death surgery, but the couple would not listen. They had paid for a specialist and refused to be seen by a junior doctor. The man got angry, shouting that the lives of poor people did not matter and could never compare to the precious life of his son. As the situation got worse, Dr. Long came out of the operating room. It turned out the man's son was being treated by this same doctor. He tried to calm the man down, explaining that Director Liu was busy with a critical heart failure patient. Just then, the man's phone rang. It was the hospital, calling to tell him that his daughter, Qin Xinwan, was in critical condition. He thought it was a scam call, shouting into the phone for his daughter to go die. Hearing the name Qin Xinwan, Dr. Long froze. He realized with horror that the rude man standing in front of him was the father of the little girl fighting for her life in the operating room. He begged the father to sign the surgery consent form, warning him that his daughter only had 15 minutes left. But the man refused to believe it, throwing the papers on the floor and insisting his daughter was safe at kindergarten. It was only when a nurse rushed out, saying that the patient was going into shock, that he began to have doubts. Dr. Long begged him one last time to just look at the child, but the man stubbornly refused, sure it could not be his daughter. As the father kept refusing, Dr. Long finally lost his patience. He yelled that if the man would not go in, then the medical staff had to, because a child's life was on the line. Feeling helpless, the doctor knelt and begged the man to let them through. The ex-wife, however, only made fun of him, starting a live stream and demanding that the doctor kowtow and apologize for cursing her daughter. With no other choice, Dr. Long bowed his head to the floor, saying sorry over and over. Just as he did, the father got a call from his wife. The kindergarten teacher had called her and she was now racing to the hospital. The man told her it was all a scam, but she screamed back that if anything happened to their daughter, she would make him pay. Suddenly, a nurse cried out that the patient's heart had stopped. The head specialist rushed back into the operating room, saying they could not wait for the parents anymore and must operate right away. Finally, the father pushed past the doctors and forced his way into the room. He saw the little girl on the gurney and his face turned completely white. It was his daughter. At that moment, Director Liu said that her heart had stopped. It was too late. The man angrily grabbed the doctor by his collar, threatening to ruin the doctor's career if he dared to move. But just as he tightened his grip, a nurse screamed in terror from down the hall. The little girl on the gurney was crashing. Her body was swelling up, and she was turning blue. It turned out this rude man was the heir to the powerful Song Group, the hospital's biggest investor, and he was blocking the only available doctor from doing emergency surgery. His wife sneered at the dying child, coldly saying that the girl should be left to die and not get in the way of her son's treatment. They were angry that the hospital's top expert, Director Liu, was not personally treating their child. But the young doctor, Dr. Long, pleaded with them, explaining that the girl only had 5 minutes left to live. The hospital director rushed over, whispering to Dr. Long that they could not afford to make this man angry, or they would all lose their jobs. The heir gave them an ultimatum. Either Director Liu would treat his son immediately, or the hospital would pay him $10 million in compensation. Trapped, the famous Director Liu was forced to leave the dying girl to check the heir's son. But after a quick look, the news was shocking. The boy was not dying at all. He just had a simple fever from teething. Yet even after hearing this, the rude man refused to back down. He insisted that since Director Liu had seen his son, he must now be responsible for all follow-up care. At that exact moment, the nurse screamed again. The little girl had started throwing up blood. Seeing this, Dr. Long was filled with anger. He pushed the heir aside and said that he was going to save this child even if it cost him his job that day. Angry at the doctors for not listening, the man violently kicked over a cart of life-saving anesthesia just as they were rushing the dying girl to surgery. He demanded the young doctor kneel and apologize, vowing that no one would save the child that day. But at that moment, the other patients in the hall had seen enough. They moved forward, forming a human wall to hold back the rude heir and clear a path for the doctors. The hospital director begged them to let the man go, but as the crowd held him back, the heir's eyes fell on a small pink watch on the dying girl's wrist. He froze in horror. It was the exact same watch his own daughter, Nguyen, was wearing. His wife tried to pull him away, but he frantically told her their whole plan would be ruined if Nguyen was hurt. It turned out if anything happened to the girl, he would lose his inheritance and be left with nothing. Ignoring his wife's pleas, he shoved his way through the crowd and lunged toward the operating room. Seeing this, the young doctor, Long, had finally reached his limit and punched the heir right in the face, sending him falling to the floor. The heir, now completely humiliated, said that his son's life was more important than anyone else's. But Dr. Long shot back that all life is equal, and this little girl was also her parents' treasure. Furious, the heir viciously punched Dr. Boyson Long in the mouth. Wiping the blood from his lip, the doctor looked him straight in the eye and delivered a final, shocking blow. He said that he knew the man was a fake, and that the true heir to the whole Song group was the dead chairman's real daughter, a woman named Song Shin-ran. As the doctor's fist hit the heir's jaw, a sleek white sports car screeched to a stop outside. A woman in a sharp suit, Song Shin-ran, rushed in, her eyes wide with panic. She screamed for them to stop. When she asked why he was at the hospital when their daughter Nguyen was supposed to be safe at kindergarten, he stumbled for an answer. At that exact moment, the young doctor, Long, confronted her, telling her the awful truth. It was her husband who had repeatedly blocked them from saving a 5-year-old girl suffering from sudden heart failure. The hospital director confirmed the story, explaining how the man had held them up, hit the doctor, and even smashed important medical equipment. The doctor explained he had found the girl collapsed on the road near her kindergarten. He then told how her husband not only got in the way of the emergency, but had also purposefully destroyed the life-saving equipment, directly cutting off the child's chance to live. As the truth sank in, Song Sin-ran was left speechless, staring in horror at the man she married. Her mind raced back to a panicked call from her daughter's teacher, and she slowly realized the little girl fighting for her life inside the operating room was her own Nguyen. A nurse came out of the operating room with bad news. The child could not be saved. The nurse explained that if they had just gotten there 5 minutes sooner, there would have been a much better chance. The rude CEO immediately blamed the hospital's incompetence, claiming that if the child had been given to a regular doctor, she might have been saved sooner. Her husband lied to her face, telling her not to listen to gossip and insisting their daughter Nguyen had been sent to kindergarten early and was perfectly safe. But the doctor immediately exposed his lies. The doctor stated that the husband was responsible and that it could be proven by the hospital's security footage. The footage showed them blocking the rescue and even included a video of them forcing him to kneel. The wife turned to her husband, her eyes full of doubt. She warned him that if she found out he had told a single lie, she would make sure he left with nothing. His guilty silence was all the answer she needed. Overwhelmed with shame, she apologized to the doctors, offering to pay for all the surgery costs and compensation for the family out of her own pocket. But the doctor angrily rejected her offer. He shouted that this was a human life and asked if she thought she could just cover it up with money. He said that it was clear he had been wrong about the Song group and wrong about her. The nurse insisted they must call the child's parents to handle the situation. Suddenly, the CEO's mistress began shouting that they were the parents and the doctors were the ones to blame, claiming the child was already dead when they arrived. The wife furiously told her to be quiet. They reluctantly apologized. But the doctor was confused. The wife had just mentioned their 5-year-old daughter. Yet he heard the other woman call the dead child her son. When he asked about it, the husband claimed that in their hometown, all relatives called him a second dad. Just then, a gurney was wheeled out of the operating room. As it passed, the wife spotted a familiar pink smartwatch on the child's lifeless hand. Her face froze in horror. The woman screamed Nguyen, her voice tearing through the clean hospital hallway as she lunged for the gurney. Her husband grabbed her arm, desperately trying to hold her back. She shrieked for him to let her go, her eyes locked on the small lifeless hand hanging over the side. He insisted that it was not Nguyen, trying to pull her away and telling her not to go over there. His mistress joined in, saying the child was already dead, and that looking would only bring bad luck. The wife pushed him away, her face full of disbelief and horror. She cried out about the watch on the child's wrist, explaining that she had bought it with Nguyen. The doctor stared at the man with pure disgust. He coldly said that now that the knife was cutting the man's own flesh, he was finally feeling the pain. The doctor stated that if it were not for the man's deliberate blocking, his daughter would not have died. The hospital director tried to step in, saying it was a done deal, but the doctor was furious. He declared that they must press charges. He insisted they had to let the police release a statement so the public would know the truth about what happened.